The void between stars held its breath. Admiral Rhea Morgan stood before the observation deck of Outpost Vanguard, her reflection ghostly against the infinite dark. For 23 years she had commanded this frontier station at the edge of charted space, watching the silent gulf where the wormhole cluster known as the Graves lay dormant. They called it the Graves because ships went in, but they never came out, Admiral. The voice of her tactical officer, Lieutenant Chen, cracked through the stillness. We're detecting a spatial distortion. Grid 779. It's growing. Rhea's hand instinctively moved to the pendant at her throat, a small piece of earth glass, older than any living memory. Show me. The holographic display materialized before her, and what she saw made her blood freeze. The wormhole was opening, not with the violent rupture of a natural collapse, but with deliberate, measured precision. Space itself peeled back like ancient petals, revealing a darkness deeper than the void. And then, slowly, majestically, something emerged, a ship. No, not just a ship. A cathedral of metal and light, spanning kilometers in every direction. Its hull was obsidian black, etched with markings that glowed with soft golden radiance. Symbols she recognized from the oldest archives. Human symbols, sacred geometry from Earth's dawn before the diaspora, before the Great Silence. My God, Chen whispered. Admiral, that design, it's pre-colonial. At least 800 years old. But it couldn't be. Nothing survived that long in deep space. Nothing human anyway. The ship drifted forward with impossible grace. And as it moved, Rhea heard it. A sound that shouldn't exist in vacuum, yet somehow reached into her mind, her chest, her very bones. A hymn, not sung by voices but by the ship itself, resonating through quantum frequencies that bypassed technology and spoke directly to the soul. The melody was ancient, mournful, and achingly beautiful. It spoke of loss and love, of sacrifice and eternal vigil. Scan it, Rhea commanded, though her voice trembled. Every sensor we have. The data flooded in, and with each passing second the impossibility deepened. No life signs. No active crew. The ship's power signature was unlike anything in recorded history. Not fusion, not antimatter, but something else entirely. Something that hummed with the frequency of stars being born. And then the message arrived. Not through standard communications, but projected directly onto every screen in the station, carved into existence by light itself. The words appeared in every language humanity had ever spoken, simultaneous and perfect. For those who came before, we remember. Rhea's hand clutched the pendant so tightly the edges cut into her palm. Around the command center, hardened officers stood frozen, tears streaming down faces that had forgotten how to cry. Ma'am, Chen's voice broke. We're receiving distress beacon recordings. Hundreds of them. They're old, centuries old, from the colony ship Meridian's Hope. The Meridian's Hope. Every child learned that name in history modules. 3,000 souls bound for New Terra, lost in the Graves 600 years ago. The first and greatest tragedy of the expansion era. The disaster that taught humanity the cost of reaching too far. Too fast. Play it, Rhea said. Static burst through the speakers, then a voice, human, desperate, fading. This is Captain Yuki Tanaka of the Meridian's Hope. Hull breach in sectors 4 through 9. Life support failing. To anyone who hears this, tell our families we tried. Tell them we saw something beautiful before the end. Tell them. The transmission dissolved into silence, then the hymn returned, wrapping around the dead captain's final words like a gentle embrace. And before Rhea's eyes, the impossible happened. The dreadnought moved toward the exact coordinates of the old distress beacon. Its forward arrays opened like wings, and light poured forth. Not the harsh glare of searchlights, but warm, golden luminescence that seemed to carry weight and purpose. The light touched something in the void. Wreckage materialized. Scattered debris from the Meridian's Hope, frozen in time and space for 6 centuries. The fragments hung suspended, turning slowly in the ancient light. And then, impossibly, they began to move, not propelled by physics, but drawn by something deeper. The pieces drifted toward the dreadnought, and as each fragment touched its hull, the golden symbols flared brighter. Names appeared in the light, thousands of them scrolling across the ship's surface in an endless roll call of the dead. Yuki Tanaka, Marcus Webb, Sophia Reyes, James O'Connor, 3,000 names. Every soul aboard the Meridian's hope. Every colonist who never reached their new world. Every dream that died in the dark. Remembered. They're bringing them home, Chen whispered, his voice thick with wonder and grief. After all these centuries, they're bringing them home. But Rhea understood something more. This ship, this impossible vessel from humanity's past, wasn't just retrieving wreckage. It was fulfilling a promise. A vow made so long ago that the very stars had shifted in their courses. No one would be forgotten. No sacrifice would fade into silent void. Every soul that ventured into darkness in humanity's name would be honored, held, remembered for eternity. The hymn swelled, and for the first time in 600 years, the dead were no longer alone. The dreadnought turned, its vast bulk rotating with serene purpose, and began broadcasting a new message, one that would ripple across every colony, every station, every world where humans drew breath. We are the keepers of memory. We are the vow fulfilled. Humanity remembers, humanity honors, and humanity never, ever forgets its fallen. In her command center, Admiral Rhea Morgan stood at attention, tears streaming freely down her face, and saluted the ancient ship that had returned from myth to prove that even death could not break the bonds of human devotion. The hymn of eternity had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The message spread like wildfire across the quantum networks. Within hours, every human settlement from the core worlds to the farthest frontier outposts had received the transmission. The hymn of eternity played in crowded stations and lonely mining colonies alike, and everywhere it touched, humanity stopped. They stopped working, stopped fighting, stopped moving. They remembered. Aboard the Valyrian dreadnought Eternal Wrath. Contested space, Sector 449. Commander Caius Vex of the Valyrian Empire had spent 40 years perfecting the art of war. His species had conquered 17 systems through calculated brutality and overwhelming force. Fear was their currency, and they had grown wealthy beyond measure. But now, standing on his command bridge with his primary arms crossed and his secondary hands trembling, Caius felt something he had never experienced in 4 decades of conquest: humility. The human dreadnought had appeared in their space without warning, bypassing every defense grid, every early warning system, every trap they had laid. It simply existed where it had not existed before, hanging in the void like a celestial monument. Should we fire? His weapons officer asked, all 4 eyes wide with uncertainty. Caius watched the golden light emanating from the vessel, watched as it moved through the debris field of an ancient battle, one his own ancestors had fought 3 centuries ago. A battle where Valyrian warriors had clashed with human colonists over a worthless moon. The Valyrians had won, or so the histories claimed, but now the human ship illuminated wreckage from both sides, Valyrian and human alike. Its light touched the scattered remains of warriors who had died believing they were enemies, and the symbols blazed across its hull with equal reverence. Kavros Ven, Valyrian strike leader, fell defending his crew. Sarah Kim, human medic, died saving wounded from both sides. Thexus Kor, Valyrian engineer, sacrificed himself to prevent reactor breach. No, Caius said quietly, his voice rough with an emotion his language had no word for. We do not fire. The hymn reached into his mind, not invasive but gentle, like a parent's hand on a child's shoulder. It sang of valor regardless of species, of sacrifice that transcended ideology, of the universal weight of loss, sir. The weapons officer's confusion was palpable. Caius touched his chest where 3 scars marked his ascension through the warrior ranks. Each scar represented a life he had taken. Each one had earned him glory. But the hymn asked a different question. Had he honored them? Open a channel, he said. All frequencies. I wish to speak to the human ship. His crew stared at him as if he had lost his mind. Perhaps he had. But watching that ancient vessel tenderly gathering the dead, his dead, alongside its own, Caius Vex realized that humanity had discovered something his empire never had: the strength to remember even enemies with honor. He transmitted a single message in broken human standard. We bear witness, we remember too. The dreadnought's light pulsed once, acknowledging, and Caius felt tears, an evolutionary vestige his people considered weakness, trace paths down his scaled face. For the first time in Valyrian history, a warship lowered its shields not in surrender but in respect. The Threnody Coalition, Deep Space Assembly Council Chambers Counselor Zephyra of the Threnody, had lived for 300 cycles. Her species experienced time differently than most. They perceived the past, present, and future as a continuous stream, making them the galaxy's most respected historians and mediators. But even she had never witnessed anything like this. The human dreadnought had arrived at the site of the Threnody's greatest shame, the Sanctuary Massacre. 200 years ago, Threnody forces had accidentally destroyed a human refugee convoy while pursuing pirates. 7,000 humans had died. Children, families, innocents. The Threnody had paid reparations. They had offered formal apologies. They had erected monuments, but they had never been forgiven. Because the humans who might have offered forgiveness were dead, and those who remained had been taught to hate, until now. The dreadnought moved through the debris field with heartbreaking precision, its light touching each piece of wreckage, each frozen body preserved in the void, and as it did, something extraordinary happened. It began to sing not just of the human dead, but of the Threnody guilt, of the sleepless cycles their commanders had spent replaying the tragedy, of the Threnody mother who had resigned her post and spent decades tending to human orphans as penance, of the pilot who had taken his own life rather than live with what he had accidentally done. The hymn honored all the victims, those who died in space, and those who lived with the weight of their deaths. Zephyra watched through her temporal perception as the message rippled forward and backward through time, touching every soul connected to that terrible day. She felt forgiveness flowing not from the living, but from the dead themselves, a benediction carried across centuries by a ship that refused to let even accidental tragedy be forgotten or dishonored. "They're healing us," she whispered, her crystalline tears falling like rain. "They're healing wounds we didn't know how to close." The human dreadnought completed its memorial and transmitted a message directly to the Threnody Council. "Tragedy is not erased by memory, it is transformed. You honored our dead with your grief. We honor your grief with our remembrance. The debt is paid. The circle is complete." In the council chambers, beings who had carried guilt like chains for 2 centuries felt them fall away. Lunar Memorial Station, Earth's moon general Marcus Stone stood before the Wall of Names, a monument stretching 3 kilometers, inscribed with every human lost to the void. For 50 years he had added names to this wall, sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, friends. His own daughter's name was here, Lieutenant Emma Stone, lost in Deep Space Patrol, body never recovered. The news feeds played footage of the dreadnought's journey across dozens of worlds. Each stop, each memorial, each impossible act of remembrance, Marcus had watched with growing wonder and pain as the ship found casualties everyone else had written off as lost forever. And then his communicator chimed with an emergency alert. The dreadnought was approaching Earth. Marcus looked up at the night sky, and even through the dome of the memorial station, he could see it, a new star, golden and bright, growing larger with each passing moment. His hands shook as he touched his daughter's name on the wall. The hymn began to play, transmitted through every speaker on Luna, and Marcus fell to his knees as the message appeared before him in letters of light. "Emma Stone, navigator, daughter, hero, grid coordinates 847.2394. Recovered, coming home. Across Earth and Luna, across Mars and the Belt Stations, across every world humanity called home." The dreadnought's message was clear. No one was forgotten. No one was abandoned. Every child who ventured into darkness was remembered, honored, and, when possible, brought home. The hymn of eternity was not just a song. It was a promise kept. And as the ancient ship entered Earth's orbit, carrying the remains of 30,000 lost souls recovered from 100 different tragedies, humanity learned what it truly meant to ascend, not through technology or conquest or empire, but through the simple, sacred act of remembering. The dreadnought settled into high orbit above Earth, and the world held its breath for 3 days. It hung there in silence, a dark cathedral against the stars, while humanity tried to comprehend what it had witnessed. The recovered remains of 30,000 souls were being prepared for return to their families, a logistics nightmare that became a sacred duty for every person involved. But questions burned in every mind. Where had the ship come from? Who built it, and why now after centuries of silence? Admiral Rhea Morgan received the summons on the 4th day. not through official channels but through the same quantum whisper that had carried the hymn across the galaxy. A simple message that appeared in her mind as clearly as spoken words. "Come aboard, Admiral. It is time you understood." The shuttle bay of the dreadnought was vast enough to swallow her entire station. As Ria's transport passed through the aperture, she felt the weight of centuries pressing against her consciousness. Not oppressive, but profound. Like standing in an ancient temple. The interior defied her expectations. She had anticipated cold machinery, sterile corridors, the functional brutality of military design. Instead, she found herself walking through galleries lined with holographic monuments. Each one displayed a face, a name, a story. Colonists and soldiers, scientists and children. Every human who had died beyond Earth's protective embrace. Millions of them. Her escort was not a person, but a presence. A gentle pressure guiding her forward through corridors that seemed to reshape themselves around her path. The hymn played softly. No longer mournful but welcoming, almost joyful. She emerged into a chamber that took her breath away. It was a sphere, hundreds of meters in diameter, its walls a transparent membrane revealing the curve of Earth below and the infinite stars above. At the center, suspended in what appeared to be pure light, was a crystalline structure pulsing with golden radiance, and around it, arranged in concentric rings, were thousands upon thousands of figures, not bodies. Not exactly. They were translucent, luminous, made of the same light as the ship itself. Human forms, but perfected, idealized, freed from the limitations of flesh while retaining every detail that made them individuals. "Welcome, Admiral Morgan," a voice said. Warm, layered with harmonics that suggested countless speakers in perfect unity. "We have waited a long time to tell our story." From the gathered assembly, a figure stepped forward. She recognized him immediately from historical archives, though he should have been dead for 800 years. Captain Elias Cade, commander of humanity's first deep space exploration mission, the one who had vanished along with his entire crew at the edge of the galaxy, sparking legends and conspiracy theories for generations. You're alive?" Ria whispered. "In a manner of speaking," Elias said with a gentle smile. "We did not die, Admiral. We transformed." He gestured to the crystalline structure at the chamber's heart. "We found it beyond the galactic rim. The Nexus, a construct older than our sun, left by beings who understood something fundamental about consciousness, memory, and the nature of existence itself." Another figure approached, a woman whose features suggested both age and timelessness. "I am Dr. Sarah Chen, xenoanthropologist. When we interfaced with the Nexus, we discovered its purpose. It was a memorial, a tomb. A promise carved into the fabric of space-time by a civilization that refused to let death erase meaning. They had all died out." Elias continued, his expression sad but reverent. "Every last one of them, scattered across 100 worlds by war and disaster and simple entropy. But they built this before the end, a way to ensure that their existence, their memories, their love and loss and triumph would echo forever." Sarah touched the crystalline surface and it rippled like water. "The Nexus offered us a choice. Return to Earth and report our findings, living out our normal lifespans, or merge with it, upload our consciousness, preserve our memories, and continue its mission. We chose to remember," Elias said simply. "We became the first keepers of memory, and over the centuries others joined us. Explorers who vanished into deep space, colonists whose ships failed, soldiers who died far from home. Every human consciousness that touched the void with courage in their hearts and accepted the calling." Ria's mind reeled. The great silence, all those ships that disappeared, were given the same choice we were, Sarah confirmed. Some chose to return. Most chose to ascend, to become part of something eternal. To ensure that no human sacrifice would ever be forgotten, that every dream cut short would be honored, that every soul brave enough to reach for the stars would be remembered forever. The assembled figures began to glow brighter, and Ria realized she was looking at the crew of the Meridian's Hope. The colonists from the Sanctuary Massacre, the soldiers from 1,000 forgotten skirmishes, explorers and scientists, merchants and refugees, all those the galaxy had thought lost, now revealed as guardians of humanity's collective memory. "We are not ghosts," Elias said. "We are not the dead refusing to rest. We are humanity's promise to itself, made manifest. We are the oath that says your sacrifice matters, your courage matters, you matter." Why reveal yourselves now? Rhea asked, though part of her already knew. Because humanity needed to remember what it stood for, Sarah said softly. You were fracturing, colony against colony, ideology against ideology. You were forgetting that you are one people, united by common origin and common destiny. You needed to see that you're dead. All you're dead. Stand together beyond the divide of politics and borders. Elias stepped closer, his luminous form radiating warmth. And because you are ready to join us among the stars, not as scattered tribes, but as a unified species that honors its past while reaching for its future. The chamber filled with light as every figure raised their hands in a gesture that transcended species and time. A salute, a blessing, a promise. We are humanity's memory, they said in unison, their voices the hymn itself. And memory is the bridge between what was and what will be. We remember the fallen so that the living can rise. Rhea felt tears streaming down her face as understanding bloomed in her chest. This was humanity's true ascension, not abandoning the flesh for pure thought, but ensuring that flesh and thought, body and memory, sacrifice and honor remained eternally intertwined. What happens now? She whispered. Elias smiled. Now you return to your people and tell them the truth. Tell them that those who venture into darkness are never alone. Tell them that courage is never wasted. Tell them that humanity has built something more enduring than empires or monuments. We have built eternity, Sarah said, one memory at a time. The dreadnought began to shift, its hull transforming as new symbols appeared, not just human, but Valyrian, Threnody, and 100 other species. The Keepers were expanding their mission, offering every spacefaring civilization the same gift. Immortality not of the body, but of meaning. As Rhea's shuttle departed, she looked back at the vessel that had changed everything. It was no longer just a human ship. It was becoming something greater, a living memorial to every species that had ever dared to dream beyond their world. The hymn played one final time, and this time, she understood every word. We are the bridge between life and legend. We are the keepers of sacred memory. We are proof that love transcends death. We are humanity's promise. You will not be forgotten. We remember. We honor. We ascend. And in remembering, we live forever. Below her, Earth turned in silence, and across the galaxy, 1 trillion souls looked up at the stars and understood at last what it meant to be mortal yet eternal, finite yet infinite, human yet divine. The keepers of memory had returned, and they would never leave again.